So, and then up next, we're going to have Peter, if you will are ready to introduce today's program. Well, you want to come up here? Then you can introduce. Yes, come on.
Jon Gell. People know he's been a Rotarian here for years. He's a physician. Went to Brown Medical School, became a rheumatologist, then a medical director at Asante. And after 10 years, he took another year of study and was in private practice for a while. And he was a client for a long. He's actually a very deep thinker, but I don't need to talk about that because he will explain that to you, Jon Gell.
Thank you, Peter. And a special thanks for Claudette Moore for setting this up for me and clearing the way. So thank you, Claudette. So this is a result of my thinking during the pandemic timeout. What's going on in the world? And I'm working on it for a while, and it is time to present it because a few months ago, I tried to put my badge away in the tea selection. So I've got to get this while I still can. Our minds are wired to look for patterns. Aptitude tests and IQ tests have to do with discerning patterns. So in that cloud, I can see a Scotty dog, maybe a dragon, could be a woman waking up from a nap. And that phenomenon is called pareidolia, and that's finding patterns in amorphous objects. And some of them are subtle, and some are pretty obvious. This is part of a larger phenomenon called apophenia, and that is defined as a cognitive bias in which a pattern is falsely detected or labeled as meaningful when it is actually absent or attributable to chance. So I've never really researched it, but I think astrology would fall in that category, the canals on Mars, and maybe some conspiracy theories. My thesis is in the field of sociology, and Peter talked about the chaos of what's going on. And we have a lot of ways to parse power, but we know of economic power and political power. And my thought is there's another power sitting unnamed in plain sight, which is explaining some of the chaos of what's going on. So money and politics are not our only hope. There is another. And that is biologic power, also known as biopower. The term was coined by a French philosopher, Michel Foucault, and he lived from 26 to 84. And he wrote about biopower. His definition was controlling, organizing, or otherwise governing large groups by placing limitations and controls on their bodies. And that certainly resonates with current events. But I'm going to extend the diagnosis a bit and change it a bit. You're all familiar with healthcare. That's pictures of Asante, Providence, and La Clinica. And people come from miles around to go to those places. And whenever I sit in as a student or employee wants to join a healthcare organization, they talk about saving people and saving lives. And that knowledge of learning how to do that is certainly power. Alongside of healthcare is public health. And that's off the Jackson and Josephine County public health websites. A healthy community is everyone's business. Also includes vaccinations and trying to educate and reduce unhealthy behaviors, alcohol, obesity, gambling. This is on tobacco's toll in Jackson County in 1 year. And public health also tracks births and deaths and rates of various diseases, including communicable diseases, and there's power and understanding in trying to manage that. Really, however, the most important are the social determinants of health. Includes education, peace and safety, sanitation, nutrition, economic opportunity, affordable healthcare access, housing, and community relationships and norms. As Andy spoke about, the connections in society, the rich with the old, the young and the poor, different cultures, different religions, different relations, and also the bonds within families. How well do we all get along and interconnect? And that is 80, 90% of actually the health care outcomes of any community. So if you could take a crucible and put in the power of the social determinants of health, and by the way, going back to those, that was Bill Thorndike. He was all about the social determinants of health. Sorry. If you took the power of the social determinants of health and public health and healthcare, and you put them in a crucible, and with the magic of Rotary, you melted them all together and forged a new concept, a new term, that would be BioPower. Is this a new idea, something brand new? Actually, most of you in the room are old enough to remember the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, HEW. And that was its flag. And that was its seal. And its motto in Latin, there is spes in core vitae, hope is the anchor of life. And included the Office of Education, the Federal Drug Administration, the Center for Disease Control, the National Institute of Health, Social Security Administration, Public Health, Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, and Center for Medicare and Medicaid Service. That was the Bureau of BioPower. It got too big and was broken. All right. Can you think of another organization that works on BioPower, tries to improve our community, our region of the world? What could that be? Rotary. You're absolutely right. It's college scholarships, Rotary Peace Fellowships, blood drives, Rotoplas, thanks, Ron. Playgrounds, tiny houses, connecting with kids, student recognition, SMART, reading program, Dolly Parton Imagination, Candyland, pickleball, Southern Oregon Fire Relief, Polio Plus, water filtration in Puerto Rico and Guatemala. Is Rotary a political organization? No. Is Rotary an economic organization? No. Rotary is a biopower organization. That's what we are. And if you want to understand biopower, think about Rotary. My introduction to the term was at a Kinsman conference, which is an annual ethics conference sponsored by Oregon Health Sciences University. And it was by Dr. Ryan Pettaway, who's a professor at Portland State and OHSU Public Health. And what he talked about was racism. And he started with a school lunch in an impoverished inner city neighborhood, a styrofoam plate, a piece of white bread, and a hot dog of unknown composition. And he compared that, contrasted that with a school lunch in a wealthy suburban neighborhood. And one lunch doesn't make a difference, but over a period of time, a child's lifetime, it probably does. We want to talk about access to healthcare, food deserts, and not having a proper grocery store in a poor neighborhood. Pollution, if you have an 8-lane highway, it's going to go through the poor neighborhood. If you have a polluting factory, it's going to sit in the poor neighborhood. Tainted water, thinking Flint, Michigan, educational access, predatory policing, and discrimination in real estate and jobs. And it reminds me to cover that the social determinants of health go both ways. They can be both negative and positive. Negative, war, famine, pandemics, pollution, drought, substance abuse, poverty, quackery. Positive, peace, food, clean air and water, affluence, education, social order, tolerance, effective healthcare. Negative biopower and positive biopower. Now, another way of looking at biopower is considering its origin. Where did biopower come from? Most religions have a deity, the ultimate source of life and abundance of biopower. The Exodus is a revelation story, starting with the burning bush and going with the overthrow of Pharaoh, who was economic, political, even considered a god. Thanksgiving is established as a holiday for positive biopower. We don't sit around and be thankful for our station or our money. We talked about our family, our friends, and the abundance of life. That is Thanksgiving. Christianity extended biopower with the idea of salvation and eternal life, the ultimate healthcare. You live forever. And that can be used to control and manipulate populations. It has been written that the word of God can be constructed to protect the temporal rule of the rich and powerful. And as I say that, let me read from Deuteronomy just to point out. You can throw a dart anywhere in the Bible, and it will be because you will heed these ordinances and keep them and perform that the Lord your God will keep you the covenant and the kindness that he swore to your forefathers. And he will love you and bless you and multiply you. He will bless the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your soil, your grain, your wine, your oil, the offspring of your cattle, and the choice of your flocks, in the land which he swore to your forefathers to give you. That's all about biopower. So I said it can be used, particularly with the concept of eternal life, or really any of these, to try to control populations, as Foucault talked about. But I'm not advocating godlessness. If you consider a gospel song, Angel Band, by Jefferson Haskell, my sun is sinking fast, my race is nearly run, my longest trials now are past, my triumph has begun. Oh, come, angel band, come around me stand. Oh, bear me away in your snow white wings to my immortal home. Oh, bear me away in your snow white wings to my immortal home. Oh, bear my longing heart to him. That is of great comfort on a deathbed. So I'm going to talk about some of the other contexts of biopower. I've spoken about racism and religion. I'm going to talk about the Second Amendment. I will cover biopower vis-a-vis the entertainment industry, and I'll finish talking about economic, political, and biopower relationships. The American story. I believe gun support derives from an imagined drama. A criminal is attempting a home invasion, but the heroic homeowner has the foresight to have a loaded firearm by his side. His wife and child are safe, the threat neutralized due to the prudence of the homeowner to have his weapon handy and the wisdom of the Second Amendment. He may not have any wealth, he may not have any political power, but at least he has a biopower to protect his home and family. Make my day. So in the Vietnam War, that got extended. Mantra was more bullets, more bodies, equating firepower with biopower. Kari Lake extended this to a public health announcement. I have a message tonight. If you want to get to President Trump, you can have to go through me, and you're going to have to go through 75 million Americans just like me. And I'm going to tell you that most of us are card-carrying members of National Rifle Association. That's not a threat. That's a public service announcement, public health. I'm going to circle back to race and biopower. And this is a book by Carol Anderson, an East Coast scholar. And her thesis in the book was the Second Amendment had to do with slavery. The Second Amendment was crafted to ensure that slave owners could quickly crush any rebellion or resistance from those they had enslaved. There are actually hundreds of slave rebellions prior to the Civil War. The right to bear arms, presumably guaranteed to all citizens, was repeatedly denied to African Americans with brutal consequences. It is still Black History Month. So let me lighten up a little bit and talk about the entertainment industry. Um, Everybody loves a good uplift story. If it's economic, it's a rag to riches, winning the lottery, looking for treasure. If it's political, it's a sword in the stone, or rail splitter to president. BioPower has uplift stories too. You can be bitten by a radioactive spider and have get superpowers. You can be exceptionally skilled in martial arts. You can be exceptionally skilled in gunplay, or you could just be big. But if you pay attention to entertainment industry and TV, often many of those are about some kind of biopower. So I'm going to close by talking about the relationships between economic power, political power, and biopower. I'll start with a Oregon example. Well, let me back up here for a second. And political and economic power. What is lobbying? How about insider trading by physicians? Most of my texts, and maybe yours today, are requests from politicians for your money. What happened to Senator Bob Menendez? So all those kind of fit together, but if you go into biopower, it gets really interesting. I'll ask you to think of an Oregon example. I'll give you three clues: an economic clue, a political clue, and a biopower clue. Let's see if you can remember the vignette from Oregon history. Rolls Royces, voters in buses, and salmonella. Exactly. So the city of Rajneesh, running around Rolls Royces, they put salmonella in the restaurants and poisoned the voters, and they brought people in to win the Wasco County elections. Sheila and the Rajneesh. So let's go back to this again. What is philanthropy? Economic power and biopower. What is the story in the US? We're the only Western country without universal health care. What's going on with that? What are relationships between economic power, political power, and biopower? What was the story of the American Revolution? You had oppression from a king. You had taxation without representation. And what was the story with that? If you have alignment of all three powers, you get an empire: Holy Roman Empire, the Ottoman empires. Pretend you're in a boardroom of a drug company and you've got a new drug and you got to figure out how to price it. Well, how well does it work? What are the side effects? How big is the population on which it might work? Now, remember, you've already taken millions of dollars from the government to develop the drug, but besides that, what could you get away with? What's your political clout? And what's your economic clout? Set the price as you will. The wellness industry. A lot of those notions work, a lot of them don't work. But if you can get people to believe that whatever you're selling works, you can make a lot of money. Abortion. What's going on with that? Global warming. January 6th, the southern border. The pieces, I think, start to fall together. I believe that having biopower helps you figure some things out. There's more pieces for the puzzle. So what is a citizen considering all three powers? What is a refugee? How does that compare to a patriot? What is a dictator? How about an immigrant with a gun? So my conclusion is that your homework assignment is to pay attention to the news. Can you reconcile my conjecture with your experience? Millions of smart people opine on these subjects every day. Why aren't other people noticing a pattern, with the exception of Foucault and Petaway? Is this the fog of life? Is this a dust of custom, quoting Wadsworth? The Dunning-Kruger effect? Am I suffering from apophenia, seeing things that aren't there, or am I onto something? Am I in vain? My conceit's in vain? Is this another one of my bad ideas, like chicken tatar? Biopower deserves to be recognized. Its influence needs to be visualized. It is the thumb of racial oppression, and its fingers are all over society. Political power, economic power, and biopower together are the triple-stranded DNA of most social constructs. We cannot fix what we do not know. Helen Keller said, the only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision. James Baldwin said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. When your spouse asks you what happened at Rotary today, you answer, a talk on biopower. Good luck explaining that. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, thanks, Claudette, for setting this up. Thanks, Peter, for coming.
Do you have any questions for Jon? Explained it perfectly.
Okay.
Hey, Jon, are there examples where you can see where the forces of biopower have come together to do good?
Well,
examples of that?
Mostly good. I mean, the whole healthcare industry, although there are obviously economic and political factions, really do improve quality of life and longevity. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you really want to improve health, you have to tackle the social determinants of health. And for concrete example, the hospital's having trouble because they have people in the hospital, they know where to send them. There's no housing for them. And they sit in the hospital with no place to go. So if you want to improve hospital, you got to improve the throughput and get people out. And you can't have one without the other. And the problem is the healthcare industry is so expensive, that's really cut into education. But yes, the positive biopower is all of what Rotary is all about. And you can measure the effects of the connections between people and how well people get along. And societies that do that well thrive, and societies that do not have trouble.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jon. And as you know, we support the Smart Reading Program. So as a thank you for being our speaker today, if you would sign the inside cover of Punky Aloha, and we'll get that to a smart reader.